Good evening. Welcome to Ask the Lady Electrical Inspector podcast. I am your host, Tabitha L. Tonight, I will provide important insight on custom seating with electrical accessories. Tonight, I will provide information on why custom seating fail electrical inspections. I will outline critical electrical standards and requirements for custom seating. Custom seating is a game changer, providing comfort, relaxation, and many accessories. As the electrical inspector, I focus mainly on the electrical accessories connected to the equipment. Some locations where I have inspected these chairs would include schools, colleges, auditoriums, theaters, arenas, sporting arenas, malls, video gaming stores. The electrical accessories available for custom seating includes power recline, adjustable head power set, massage feature, a USB charging port, LED lighted cup holder, LED base lighting, a standard 120 receptacle outlet plug. As the electrical inspector, I have visually inspected several custom seating with electrical power, ensure compliance. As the electrical inspector, I have noticed a common pattern while performing these inspections. From my personal experience, I would like to recommend two suggestions to get your project headed in a positive path. The first suggestion I would like to make would be making sure that you have cooperation amongst the electrical contractor, the general contractor, the architect, the manufacturer. Is vital for a successful installation that complies with the minimum requirements of the National Electrical Code. It's important that you all get together to talk about what is required, the location, the venue, the wiring methods. Those things are vital when you're picking out chairs for certain locations, because you have to understand that with the public, the safety is first. The wiring methods are very important. So the first thing is to make sure you all get together and discuss the project. Cooperation. The second recommendation that I would make is to ensure that your equipment is listed before it arrives on the job site. So as the electrical inspector, when I arrive on the job site, the first thing I check to make sure that the chair is listed. If it isn't listed, then I'll check the electrical contractor's work to make sure that it's in compliance, and then we would have a listing issue. So I recommend implementing these two suggestions when planning or designing these type of projects. Early detection of any possible NEC violations will help your project keep it in alignment with the industry standards and will not cause any delays. So the industry question that I receive often when I perform these type of inspections, when I arrive, this is an industry question. It's a custom chair. It's an electrical chair. It's customized. And it has components, and each component is separately listed. So the electrical contractor, from their point of view, they see that each component is each separately listed, and they point that out. Section, this is listed, and that component is listed. It's listed as a separate component. So they want to know, the question is, why isn't it considered listed if you have components that are listed? For the answer would be the authority having jurisdiction, Electrical Code Ordinance 1102-08. The components has to be listed as a complete assembly. A complete assembly. When you have different components, now it must be listed as a group. So these components are listed as components only. These components are added to the chair. So they're added to a piece of furniture. Earlier, I spoke of the different accessories. So I wanted to try to give you an example of the components. You have a Class 2 power supply on most of these components because with the LED lighting, you're going to have drivers somewhere in that wiring installation or that chair. You're going to have LED lighting. You're going to have Class 2 power supplies because of the components that are here. That's how they function. So all of these components are just individually listed. Now, each component is listed by it's possible that it could be listed by a separate nationally recognized testing laboratory. Now, OSHA created the nationally recognized testing laboratory program, and it's a program. The program is private individual organizations. So each nationally recognized testing laboratory has its own sets of requirements and certification marks. Each nationally recognized testing laboratory has its own scope of testing standards that it recognizes. So back to the components. Now, if you have a component that's listed by agency and they have their own scope of standards, and then you may have another listing agency, a separate listing agency, and they may have another component on this chair, and that component could be listed by a different listing agency with their own scope of testing standards to be recognized. Now, the nationally recognized testing laboratory has its own proprietary set of testing procedures from which are based on a rules from the IEC, the International Electrotechnical Commission. So my point here would be that if you have these different testing laboratories nationally, now they nationally recognized, and they have their own set of requirements and certification marks, their own sets of standards. In the chair, you're taking a piece of standard of furniture and turning it into, you're modifying it. With all of those components put together, now you must have it listed as an overall assembly because someone has to do the final testing to say that all of these components work together. The custom seats require adding electrical equipment and electrical components to a piece of equipment, a chair, as I mentioned. And if each electrical component is separately listed, how is it determined that these components are capable of functioning together without creating a fire hazard or a safety hazard? The custom seating shall bear an overall listing as an assembly. And as I mentioned, the authority having jurisdiction with that 1102. Now, each piece of equipment and the components are separately listed, as I stated. So it has to be tested, and that gives us assurance. Custom seating shall bear overall listing as an assembly. When a piece of electrical equipment bears an overall listing as an assembly, substantial testing was performed to ensure that all electrical equipment and components, the chair consists of wood. It could, the structure of the chair could be wood. It could be metal. It could be plastic, aluminum. The chair, it could be made of leather, fabric, cotton, polyester. All have been tested together to ensure for the public safety. So that's what the testing is all about. This is the responsibility of the nationally recognized testing laboratory to test for electrical safety and mechanical safety, and then perform more extensive testing for durability, resistance, and longevity. The durability testing is typically performed under adverse conditions. Consumers will know they are getting a safe product. Now, the references that were used. Before I give you those references, I just want to summarize that. We go on the job. I go on the job. The chair is located there on the job, and if I don't see the listing, now you have to have a field evaluation. All of that with the nationally recognized testing laboratory that I mentioned, that comes if the chair arrives on site without it having an overall listing. And the references are the National Electrical Code 110.3b. Equipment is listed, labeled, or both. Testing, product evaluation, product certification shall be performed by a recognized, qualified electrical testing agency, as I stated, and it with the AHJ electrical ordinance, you must bear an overall rating. It has to have with the rating part, an overall listing as an assembly. When you put all of those parts together, it has to have an overall listing stating that, hey, it's been tested and approved. The publications that were used, UL 962 Household Commercial Furnishing, UL 1598 Standard for Lighting and Luminaires, UL 8750 issued for Standard for Safety and Light Emitting, the National Fire Protection Association 260, National Fire Protection Association. The fire code safety code varies by location and are administered by state and local fire marshals. Those are the publications that I use for some of the materials that I looked up. So there is a marking CE. I'm often shown that because now with the listings being an issue on the jobs, because you have to follow the manufacturer's instructions. You have to follow the listings. The CE mark, it stands for Conformity European. In French, that indicates a product has met the EU health, safety, and environmental requirements. It's required for many products that are traded in the European Economic Area, the EEA, and allows products to be sold throughout the EU. The difference between UL certification versus CE. We all have seen logos like UL in other countries, maybe. In the EU, a similar organization is the CE, which sets the standard for common electronics. The CE, as I stated, refers to the the European, which translate into English as European. CE is UL. Unlike the UL mark, the CE marking is not a safety certification mark. It's generally based on self-declarations rather than third-party certifications. Does not demonstrate compliance to the North America safety standards or installations. So the question I often get, do the authority having jurisdiction accept the CE? And that would be no. There are a lot of symbols that are accepted, and if you need a list of those, as I stated in previous episodes, I would give you those lists because there are quite a few. That's one that will not be accepted. The unlisted custom seating, the issues that I found when I did inspection, when I did an inspection on the subject that came up was a chair that didn't have a listing. I went on the job site. I performed inspection. The motor actuator from the manufacturer, it didn't have a directory. It didn't show any listings for the motor actuator component. The power supply in the chair, it did not have any listing on it whatsoever. It did not say whether it was class 2, class 1. It didn't have any writing or anything on the power supply. Article 400 of the National Electrical Code governs the use of flexible cord. So I couldn't find anything. There was about 10 cords and 10 flexible cords, and there was not any writing on any of the cords, so could not tell any information on the cords. Those things were red flags. Now the equipment has arrived on site. A field evaluation will be required. Once you get there and it doesn't have the correct stickers or the correct listing, a field evaluation will be required. And a report must be sent to the authority having jurisdiction. So I want to give you some of the corrections that was they were not recommended. These were corrections that were found, and before a field evaluation could pass, these corrections must be made. So here are some of the things that they found when a nationally recognized testing laboratory came on site to do a field evaluation. The luminaires shall be marked with the following. The discrepancy. No nameplate was provided. The manufacturer name and the date code marking must be provided the next time they came on site for verification. Another thing they found, a luminaire shall be marked with a catalog number, a model number, serial number, and other similar designations. The marking was not provided but is required. So that must be verified before it's a listed product. A luminaire that employs a ballast or a transformer shall be marked with the input rating in volts, hertz, and total amperes and wattage. The discrepancy. The electrical rating was not visible due to installation of the power supply being hidden on the opposite side of the wall. So the power supply, they couldn't read the writing, and if you have any labels, it must be visible. A strain relief cord. The strain relief cord was subject to mechanical damage. The damage to internal connections and components. The correction. No strain relief was provided. The conductor between the power supply and the junction box was required. The correction would be to enclose the conductor in the flexible conduit or provide a strain relief device at both the power supply and the junction box entrance. That was corrected. The discrepancy. The high voltage, medium voltage, 120, and the low voltage circuits are contained in the same enclosure. The LED power supply and the low voltage, they were not separated as required. So the solution would be to put a barrier inside and separate. Also, they changed it out and put in 600 volt, 90 rated MT conductor, class 1. That correction was made. The conductor shall have a minimum temperature rating in accordance with the table. So the conductors, they were not in contact with the transformer, and they came in contact with the transformer, and it required a minimum cable of 90C. And the wiring had to be, it was a CL3P. So those were the corrections that the field evaluator caught. Those are the corrections that were wrong with the chair that were internal that we actually did not inspect. That we actually did not inspect. So that's something to be, something to take heed to when purchasing these chairs. So remember, if electrical equipment arrives on the job site without a listing, a field evaluation will be required. Printing labels and applying labels in the field will not be permitted. It's a violation of the National Electrical Code. Once the equipment arrives on the job site, you're not permitted to bring stickers on the job site. It's not permitted. Please reference the authority having jurisdiction, Article 1102.80. The equipment, the field evaluation performed by a third-party nationally recognized testing laboratory will be mandatory. The purpose of these inspections is to provide a review of the electrical construction in the subject product and provide a degree of assurance that the construction complies with the requirements of appropriate standards. This evaluation is limited to the equipment itself and is not specifically included to identify any issues with the wiring. Tune in next week. I will give you a list of reasons why home kitchens and commercial kitchens fail electrical inspections. My goal is to be proactive in preventing future non-compliant code issues before the inspection happens. If you have any questions or comments, or would like to add a suggestion or suggest a specific topic that you would like for me to discuss, please contact me on social media, Facebook, Instagram, X, YouTube, under the moniker Ask the Lady Electrical Inspector. If you would like to add any discussions, anything to this discussion, please provide feedback. You can email me at asktheladyelectricalinspector@gmail.com with any questions or electrical concerns. Thank you for tuning in, and good night.